feel free to communicate in the language that feels most accessible to you, and to recognize that even both Spanish and English are rooted in colonization and displacement. That said, we are hoping this space can be fluid with language and to not feel you have to accommodate by engaging in English or one language over the other. The folks who will be leading our conversations may be guiding us in both Spanish and English, sometimes in one or the other, with translations in the chat. We are experimenting with a more fluid way of understanding language. There may be times where we don't understand each other, and that's okay. We welcome you all to respond in whatever way feels right, whether that be in English, Spanish, in reactions, in the chat, whatever. Interpreting is difficult, so we need to be active listeners, talk slower, and leave space for each other. If you want to interpret for yourself, please do. And there may also be times where we can't interpret each other, and we encourage y'all to sit in the discomfort and challenge of listening and learning from these feelings. We also encourage patience and care as we try these new things out together. Second thing about this space is it is intended for multiple age groups. Often we are taught that adults do the teaching and young people learn, but we know that we can all learn from each other, and there may be some of us who are younger or older than others. As an intergenerational collective, we were supported by young people in our homegrown community in the creation of this session, but want to name that they are not joining us in facilitation in this space at this time. That said, this space is intended for us to learn across generations, even in the absence of our young collaborators. We can practice what intergenerational education teaches us about being learners and teachers.
Dos recordatorios sobre el espacio. Este espacio es bilingüe. Ningún idioma es primero, mejor o dominante. Con eso queremos decir, preséntense y siéntense libres de comunicarse en el idioma que les resulte más cómodo y de reconocer que incluso tanto el español como el inglés tienen sus raíces en la colonización y el desplazamiento. Esto dicho, esperamos que este espacio pueda ser fluido con el idioma y que no se sienta que tiene que acomodarse hablando inglés o un idioma sobre el otro. Las personas que dirigen nuestras conversaciones pueden guiarnos tanto en español como en inglés, a veces en uno u otro, con traducciones en el chat. Estamos experimentando con una forma más fluida de entender el lenguaje. Puede haber momentos en los que no nos entendamos y eso está bien. Les invitamos a todos a reconocer y responder de la manera que les parezca adecuada, ya sea en inglés, en español, en reacciones, en el chat, como gusten. Interpretar es difícil, por lo que debemos ser oyentes activos, hablar más despacio y dejar espacio para los demás. Si quieres interpretar por ti mismo, hazlo. También puede haber momentos en los que no podamos interpretarnos unos a otros, y les alentamos a todos a sentarse en la incomodidad de eso y más en el desafío de escuchar y aprender de estos sentimientos. También alentamos la paciencia y el cuidado mientras probamos estas cosas nuevas juntas. Además, debemos recordar ser pacientes unas con otras. Si quieres interpretar por ti misma, hazlo. Segundo, este espacio incluye personas de varias edades. A menudo se nos enseña que los adultos enseñan y los jóvenes aprenden, pero sabemos todos que podemos aprender unos de otros. Puede que algunos de nosotros seamos más jóvenes o mayores que otros. Como colectivo intergeneracional, los jóvenes de nuestra comunidad de cosecha, Homegrown, nos apoyan en la creación de esta sesión, pero queremos mencionar que no se unirán a nosotros en este espacio en este momento. Dicho esto, este espacio está destinado a que aprendamos de generación en generación e incluso en ausencia de nuestros jóvenes colaboradores, podemos practicar lo que la educación intergeneracional enseña acerca de que todos somos aprendices y maestres.
So our goal for this workshop is to map out the ways the colonial educational project enforces violent borders within our communities, institutions, ourselves, in ways that limit our capacity to learn and imagine. Through an interactive brainstorm, we'll reflect on the ecosystems of intergenerational knowledge that exist beyond the boundaries of classrooms, deconstruct borders, physical borders, binaries between young and old, etc., and then collectively visualize what it takes to grow nourishing educational spaces beyond school.
Nuestra meta para este taller es mapear las formas en el que el proyecto educativo colonial impone fronteras violentas dentro de nuestras comunidades e instituciones y limita nuestra capacidad de aprender e imaginar. A través de una lluvia de ideas interactiva, reflexionaremos sobre los ecosistemas de conocimiento intergeneracional que existen más allá de los límites de las aulas, de construir las fronteras físicas, binarios entre jóvenes y viejos, etcétera, y luego visualizar colectivamente lo que se necesita para crecer una educación nutritiva en espacios más allá de la escuela.
We are going to be moving in and out of group activities. Some of those will be self-reflective, some we welcome share outs. We are reminded that our education system is not set up to allow space for all learners and learning styles. And sometimes we feel more quiet and prefer to observe or reflect internally. And sometimes we feel like processing outwardly with others. So we hope that this mix of activities supports how each of us are showing up today.
Vamos a trabajar dentro y fuera de actividades grupales, algunas que necesitarán un poco de autorreflexión. Y vamos a trabajar con actividades de grupo en Miro, una plataforma interactiva muy fácil de usar con ejercicios de movimiento y escritura por medio.
Yes, we will eventually work on Miro, an interactive platform that's very easy to use with a movement and writing exercise in between. And we'll have 2 breaks today, which we'll take after our first round of activities, and then again after we share some of our learnings as homegrown.
Sí. Entonces, como mencioné, vamos a trabajar en la plataforma de Miro y luego de ahí tendremos 2 descansos hoy que tomaremos después de nuestra primera ronda de actividades y nuevamente después de compartir algunos de nuestros aprendizajes como homegrown. Muy bien, reconocimiento del espacio. Antes de seguir adelante, queremos reconocer que nuestro trabajo está inherentemente situado dentro de un contexto colonial. Mientras discutimos el impacto de las fronteras en la educación, las relaciones y el acceso al conocimiento, debemos reconocer los legados y las manifestaciones modernas del genocidio. El robo de tierras, el despojo y la eliminación de las comunidades nativas. Hay muchas maneras en que podemos honrar las tierras en las que estamos asentadas, así como a los habitantes ancestrales de estas tierras. Comencemos por nombrarles, si aún no lo ha hecho, continúe y háganos saber de qué tierras ancestrales está llamando en el chat. Si no lo sabe, eche un vistazo a este sitio web, es native-land.ca. En relación al colectivo de Homegrown, nuestros miembros están asentados en las tierras ancestrales no cedidas de las naciones Kumeyaay, Payumkawichum y Tongwa, respectivamente, en lo que ahora se conoce como los condados de San Diego y Los Ángeles, así como en México hasta Baja California. Nombrar las tierras en las que estamos situadas, asentadas y los pueblos indígenas a quienes les fueron robados es solo el primer paso de muchos necesarios para dar un reconocimiento genuino. Hay muchas otras acciones que podemos tomar para honrar y reconocer las tierras nativas y los pueblos nativos, incluidas entre otras las siguientes.
All right, so before we move any further, we want to recognize that our work is inherently situated within a colonial context. As we discuss the impact of borders on education, relation, and access to knowledge, we must also acknowledge the legacies and modern day manifestations of genocide, land theft, dispossession, and erasure of Native communities. There are many ways we can honor the lands we're settled on, as well as the ancestral inhabitants of those lands. So let's start by naming them. If you haven't already, please go ahead and let us know whose ancestral lands you're calling in from in the chat. And if you don't know, go ahead and take a look at this website, native-land.ca. We'll put that in the chat for you. For the Homegrown Collective, our members are settled on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Kumeyaay, Payumkawichum, and Tongva nations, respectively, in what is now known as the San Diego and Los Angeles counties, as well as in Mexico as far south as Baja California. The Kumeyaay Nation specifically has been violently separated by the US-Mexico border, and their people continue to resist physically, spiritually, and strategically to protect their ancestral knowledge ways, cultural practices, and community structures. Naming the lands we're settled on and the native people from whom they were stolen from is only the first step of many needed to give genuine acknowledgement. There are many other actions we can take to honor and acknowledge Native lands and Native people. Shared on the screen right now are just some of many. Although we don't have the time today to walk through all of them together, we will share this slide deck with you all and hope that you can return to these as you continue to work in solidarity with the ancestral communities of the land you are all on.
Hola, soy Ashley, uso los pronombres ella, ellos y llamo desde las tierras de Kumeyaay, San Diego. Gracias por acompañarnos ahora. Y bien, pues ahora que nos hemos conectado a la tierra, vamos a hacer una actividad más intencional. Vamos a hacer un ejercicio de respiración. Este ejercicio te ayuda a despejar la mente, nos permite instalarnos en nuestro espacio y nos permite comenzar juntos. Este ejercicio será en inglés y en español, así que quiero que piensen en dos cosas antes de empezar. Primero, no pasa nada si no entienden algo, tanto ahora como en la vida. Cuando no entiendes algo, si te entra un sentimiento de frustración, respira y déjalo ir. Continúa escuchando activamente la parte en que sí entiendes.
Hi all, I'm Ash. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm also calling in from the Kumeyaay Islands or San Diego. Before we actually do jump into this breathing exercise, I just wanted to maybe build some connection here in the space today. So I just wanted to pause and to piggyback off of Zro, ask that y'all put in where you're calling from today. Thank you so much, Divi. And your name, pronouns, just so we can get a sense of who is with us would be really helpful since we've been talking so much. And we're just so grateful for those that joined us. Appreciate y'all, excited to get to know you. So as folks do that, I'm going to, similar to what Ashley just shared, let you all know that we are, since we've grounded ourselves, thanks to Zro and Adine, now we'll engage in a more intentional check-in. So we're going to do a breathing exercise, and this exercise helps you clear your mind and lets us settle into our spaces and allows us to start together. This exercise will be in both English and Spanish, as you've already seen, and want you to think of two things before we start. First, it's okay to not understand something, both now and in life. And when you don't understand something, or if a feeling of frustration comes in, you can take a breath and let it go, and continually actively listening for the part when you do understand.
También es muy importante para cualquier ejercicio de respiración en cualquier idioma seguir respirando. Sabemos que estar presente para estos ejercicios a veces puede ser un poco confuso, pero no hay necesidad de contener la respiración para esperar al aviso o nuestra instrucción de respirar. Siga su impulso natural de respirar y nuestras voces guiarían su pensamiento y sus consideraciones. Si te sientes llamado a compartir tus reflexiones, hazlo en el chat, por favor.
Thanks, y'all. It's so cool to see where folks are joining us from. Again, just grateful to have and build community with you. So also very important to any breathing exercise in any language is to keep breathing. So we know that being present for these exercises can sometimes be confusing. There is really no need to hold your breath to wait for the prompt or our instruction to breathe. Please follow your natural impulse, and our voices will guide your thoughts and considerations. And if you feel called to share reflections, please do so in the chat. Now we're going to begin our breathing exercise together. To begin, let's just begin checking in with our body. If y'all are in spaces where you can find a comfortable position, wiggle around in your seat. If you need to adjust, place your feet on the floor if possible.
Comenzamos tomando conciencia de nuestro cuerpo. Buscamos una posición cómoda. Muévete en tu asiento si necesitas acomodarte. Coloca tus pies en el suelo si es posible.
And release your shoulders. Allow your hands to rest on your lap or fall to the side.
Suelta los hombros, deja que tus manos descansen sobre tus muslos y que caigan a un costado.
You can close your eyes or find somewhere to rest your gaze.
Puedes cerrar los ojos o encontrar un lugar para descansar la mirada.
Begin noticing your breath.
Comienza a tomar conciencia de tu respiración.
Notice the difference between the inhale and the exhale.
Date cuenta de la diferencia entre el inhalar y exhalar.
Feel your rib cage expanding and contracting.
Siente tus costillas expandándose y contrayéndose.
Slow down your breath.
Respira más lento.
Visualize your lungs filling with oxygen.
Visualiza cómo tus pulmones se llenan de oxígeno.
After your next inhale, hold your breath for 4 seconds and then release.
Después de tu siguiente respiro, sostén tu respiración por 4 segundos y luego suelta.
As you are breathing, feel the space each breath creates in your body.
Conforme respiras, siente el espacio que cada respiración crea en tu cuerpo.
Continue breathing at your own pace, nice and slow. Notice each inhale and each exhale.
Continúa respirando a tu propio ritmo, suave y lentamente. Observa cada inhalación y exhalación.
Notice the sensations in your body.
Observa las sensaciones en tu cuerpo.
Can you feel the energy coming off of the ground through the soles of your feet?
¿Puedes sentir la energía que sale del suelo a través de las plantas de tus pies?
Do you notice your knees and other joints?
¿Notas tus rodillas y otras articulaciones?
If any part of your body clenches back up, as my shoulders often do, just soften and release them again with an exhale.
Si alguna parte de tu cuerpo se aprieta, como suelen hacer mis hombros, simplemente suelta de nuevo con una exhalación.
Continue breathing, generous inhales and exhales.
Continúa respirando, inhalaciones y exhalaciones profundas.
With your next exhale, tilt your head forward, bringing your chin towards your chest, feeling the stretch in the back of your neck.
Con tu próxima exhalación, inclina la cabeza hacia adelante, llevando tu barbilla hacia tu pecho, sintiendo el estiramiento en la parte de atrás de tu cuello.
We will keep our head like this for a moment. Continue with your conscious inhales and exhales.
Manteniendo la cabeza inclinada por un momento, continúa con tus inhalaciones y exhalaciones conscientes.
With each breath, I'd like for you to think of the transformations that are happening in your body at every moment.
Con cada respiración, me gustaría que pensaras en la transformación que está sucediendo en tu cuerpo en cada momento.
How each breath brings in oxygen to be delivered to your bloodstream, to your brain.
Como cada respiración jala oxígeno para ser entregado a tu torrente sanguíneo, a tu cerebro.
How each sound is transformed into a word, into a thought, or an action.
Como cada sonido se transforma en una palabra, en un pensamiento, en una acción.
With each breath, think of how traveling smells might be transformed into memories, into sensations.
Con cada respiración, piensa en cómo los olores que cruzan tu camino pueden transformarse en recuerdos, en sensaciones.
With each deep breath, each inhale and exhale, think of the work your body does to transform feelings of confusion or fear into empathy or even joy and excitement.
Con cada respiración profunda, al inhalar y exhalar, piensa en el trabajo que hace tu cuerpo para transformar sentimientos de confusión o miedo en empatía o en incluso alegría y emoción.
Our existence is filtered and transformed by our bodies.
Nuestra existencia es filtrada y transformada por nuestros cuerpos.
Take these moments to be gentle with yourself, to release, to feel the warmth.
Aprovecha estos momentos para ser amable contigo mismo, para dejar ir, para sentir el calor de tu propio cuerpo.
Take these breaths to remember that you are a site of transformation, and we are all we need to build loving, liberated futures.
Usa estas respiraciones para recordar que eres un sitio de transformación y que somos todo lo que necesitamos para construir futuros amorosos y liberados.
Enjoy these communal breaths.
Disfruta de estas respiraciones comunitarias.
And remember that while we are in different spaces, we are all here together.
Y recuerda que mientras estamos en diferentes espacios, estamos aquí juntas.
Deep inhale.
Y exhala.
Now rub your palms together.
Frote tus palmas juntas.
Feel the heat.
Siente el calor.
Bat your eyes open.
Lentamente abre los ojos.
And come back to notice yourself in the space around you.
Y regresa y toma nota de ti misma y de tu entorno.
And of others who are here with you.
Y de quienes estamos aquí contigo.
And to finish, I like to do a big stretch. Para terminar, me gusta hacer un estiramiento grande.
Gracias. Perdón.
Thank you all so much. Bringing each other back into the space.
All right. Thank you so much for being present and holding space for each other as well. Welcome to part 2 now. We are going to start activating in a bit of a different direction. We're using whatever tools y'all are comfortable with, whether that be pen and paper or the chat is strongly encouraged. On the screen, we currently have 2 terms. Borders and Colonial Education Project. Within Homegrown, we define these words such as the edge or boundary of something, or the part near it for borders, and for Colonial Education Project, an umbrella of education which thrives off assimilation and ultimately hyperfixates on erasure and perfection. Yeah, and we'd like y'all to do some reflecting on those words as well with us. What do each of these words mean to y'all? What comes to mind when you see or hear these words? These associations that you have can be literal or symbolic, visions, colors, smells. We urge you to hold on to these impressions that these words have for our second follow-up association. And now we'd like to spend the next 2 minutes reflecting in whatever way feels comfortable to y'all, and come back together shortly. Great. So I'm happy that that gave y'all enough time to like sit with these words, and I hope however you're choosing to explore what came up for you feels comfy and like there's enough space to do so. I'm now going to pass the mic to Edine so that they can share their own personal experience with learning within the context of the San Diego-Tijuana borderlands and how the US education system ultimately bleeds through this specific border.
And before Edine shares, just want to also hold space for those who did share in the chat. Please keep those reflections with you as you hear Edine's experiences as well, as we'll be returning to these at the next activity. But thank y'all. These are, yeah, powerful, and appreciate those that have shared them in the chat already.
Sí. Hola. Entonces, me imagino que cada quien tiene sus experiencias con las fronteras y la educación colonial y estandarizada por parte del Estado. Esto es un poco de cómo las he vivido yo. Gran parte de mi vida la he pasado aquí en Tijuana, desde antes del kinder a excepción de los años de secundaria que vive una caótica transición hacia un sueño usamericano fallido. Todos estos años, todo este tiempo me la he pasado en escuelas públicas de gobierno, en uniformes que solo afirman activamente un binarismo de género, una clase social, en estrictas dinámicas de castigo y control por parte del personal escolar, entre el fervor adolescente gestionado cristianamente, y es ahora que paro a escuchar mi pasado por este modelo educativo que me entristece y llena de asco la forma como explícitamente la escuela aplica violencias con el fin de moldear las juventudes a la forma como, con el fin de moldear las juventudes hacia los campos laborales dictados, los campos laborales y de ser, ¿no? Dictados por la frontera. En nuestro caso esta, la frontera, no solo es una idea abstracta o una delimitación marcada por mucho con pintura amarilla en el suelo. Está presente en las docenas de call centers, ¿no? En el turismo médico, en las muchas maquilas, en la renta en dólares, pero me pagan en pesos mexicanos. Está presente en un muro de metal que se extiende por kilómetros en la ciudad, sangrando, distinguiendo un aquí y un allá. El muro está presente en el aula escolar y se filtra a las agendas culturales y educativas. A todo nivel.
Muchísimas gracias, Adin, por compartir tu experiencia. Pues ahora que hemos reflexionado sobre alguna de nuestras propias experiencias con las fronteras en el proyecto de educación colonial, nos gustaría que volvieran a sus notas y con suerte escribieran algo en relación a la primera reflexión y nos gustaría abrir el espacio para que todos pueden reflexionar ahora sobre cómo las fronteras en relación a la edad, fronteras físicas, fronteras de colonización, les causaron daño. Nos gustaría expandir expandir de lo que entendemos por fronteras. No solo estamos pensando en las fronteras en un sentido físico, fronteras literales, pero entre naciones, ciudades, los binarios entre jóvenes y viejos, diferencias de clase económicas, fronteras y barreras lingüísticas, privatización y conocimiento público. Soy yo que compartimos poquita de nuestras reflexiones. ¿Qué está sugiriendo para ustedes? ¿Cómo han causado daño las fronteras? Fronteras geopolíticas, de edad, clase, idioma, privatización y conocimiento público. Y queremos abrir el espacio por unos cuantos minutos. We want to open up the space for a couple of minutes similarly to the reflection above and just give y'all time within your own context of comfort to reflect on these themes. Thank you.
Yeah, so we just, to piggyback off Ashley, we want to build off of that first reflection question that we shared, where y'all hopefully jotted down or moved your bodies in ways to reflect on the words borders and colonial education project. And now we'd like for you to expand on those reflections based on also Adin's reflections and personal experiences on how those the experiences of borders in the colonial education project have caused you harm. And we of course want you to expand on what that means by borders, whether that's literal or age, class, language, so forth. But hopefully that helps tie in the reflections you already did silently with yourselves already. And please feel free to put those, you can share those in the chat, but we'd also love to practice maybe even using the annotate function and like plopping reflections in here. And you can share them as a sentence paragraph that Katie just shared, but you also can draw the visual that you had in your mind. You could also write a part of your poem if you wrote a poem, or the words, the smells or sounds that came to mind, you can write those But hopefully folks, if anyone needs support with the annotate function, it is, if you go to, actually, I can't see it myself. So this is actually a question that we have for our tech support, is if we have this feature currently.
I am also not seeing it, and that's something that the AMC folks set up prior to my starting this meeting.
All right, that's totally no problem. We at least figured that we don't have that feature with us today, and that is totally okay. Since we actually haven't held space for folks to share verbally, like we maybe welcome y'all to come into the space in this way if you'd like, just to hear voices. It feels nice to feel that like connection, but also no pressure as well. And you can continue sharing reflections in the chat, and maybe I can read them out loud, just so that we can have that connection if folks felt comfortable in that way, or if you wanted to yourself. I see Katie shared some. Adine, did you have some reflection?
Oh, pues, estaba pensando en lo que me habían dicho de, esta de dividir. Just had that word in my head. Dividers, dividir.
Thank you so much, Adine, for those. Anyone else want to share? Or if it's okay, Katie, that I share your reflections verbally, let me know. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it looks like Katie has been reflecting on this as well. Feeling, as a teacher, they often think about dismantling colonial education in their room, but this was helpful in reminding me to ground in my own experience. Yeah, that we're all a part of this, not only like those that you're guiding and supporting in a classroom, but your own experience, and that shows up in the way in which you are in relation with the young people. Yeah, thank you, Katie. Did anyone else want to share? I see some folks also adding to the chat.
I would love to share, just briefly, I'm reflecting on the borders of gender essentialism. As a gender expansive individual, the borders around what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to look and how you're supposed to act and all the control and coercion involved in making sure you stay in there. It's trauma.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's another very, very harmful border that is very present in our lives. Yeah. Anyone else want to share?
I work in kind of education, but mostly nonprofit, and we are a resource space for teachers and community members. And we are on the border. We're in Detroit, but we border a lot of white communities, and the nuanced space of upholding our own ethics and values and dismantling white supremacy, like at all costs when it comes into our store, is fucking exhausting. And it's a space that like we are all genders, all races, all religious backgrounds, and we hold space for all of that. But it is so clear the way that borders affect people's ability to see the humanity in people, and how like stark that is within the space, and how that just directly translates to the education system here in Detroit, and the ways that people like uphold these bullshit standards and this space of learning, and there is no access. It's wild to see that happen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stevie, for sharing just the context within the Detroit area and y'all's communities. It seems like, Julia, you also had some reflections regarding Detroit, and also even just the border that's present between city and suburbs, which I think maybe Stevie spoke to a little bit, and the complexity of all of that. I don't know if you want to share anything more, but thank you both.
Yeah, I really definitely resonate with what Stevie is saying there, and it's super true. In Detroit, we have a major, one of the most racially segregated cities in the country. And one of the things that it makes me think about is in my life, my parents, I grew up in Detroit, but I am white, and my parents sent me to a suburban school so that I wouldn't be the only white student in my school in Detroit, where I would have gone. And they did that, you know, for all sorts of reasons, complicated reasons. But what ended up happening is, you know, there's this narrative that the suburban schools are somehow better than the Detroit schools. Like they're better funded. They're supposedly just better. They have all these programs and stuff. But in a lot of ways, they're terrible, terrible places full of violence and bullying and, you know, just awfulness. And so I had a really terrible experience in school. And so I talk a lot with folks about one of the reasons I identify as a school abolitionist is from that experience of being sort of shipped across this border to this other community to go to school because those kids looked like me and those schools were supposedly better for me. So it's just a very complicated history of borders and schooling in Metro Detroit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Julia and Stevie. And it's something not unique. I feel that on a very deep personal level, also growing up in suburban in a very white community. That's, you know, it continues to be the spaces where we perpetuate these very harmful border relationships, even when these suburban schools are visualized as better or, yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that. Anyone else have thoughts before we go into break?
So are we just sharing our thoughts on these concepts?
We're sharing, building off of that first reflection, which was like how just what words or movement or sounds, smells were coming to mind for you when you first thought about borders and the Colonial Education Project. And now, how have both of those caused you harm?
Oh, got it.
Yeah, and we're hoping that we could use the annotate function to give y'all like different variety of options for sharing back, but also no pressure to share verbally. You can also share in the chat. But we will probably have one more reflection and then move into break just because of time. But just really, really grateful to share in these this conversation with everybody. Yeah, so I was also gonna share a little bit in the from what folks are saying in the chat, and then maybe we'll go into break if no one else has reflections.
Sure, yeah, it looks like Katie shared that they're just listing some harm that has impacted them, the colonial education forcing them to conform, sit still, perform education through testing and figuring out the one right answer, forcing youth to learn in groups of their peers, which restricts access to greater community and culture, especially elders, and prioritizing English as a language. Also, no acknowledgement at all of indigenous land and atrocities of our collective history and legacy of colonization. Facts. Thank you, Katie. Stevie also added that white people do not think about what their white bodies mean moving into spaces. They don't realize their bodies are borders. Oof. That their bodies are bringing harm into spaces. There is such hierarchy based on education without any desire to sacrifice their access. Woo! Y'all are dropping flames right now. Yes, honored to have read that for you. But with that, as Ash said, we are approaching our break time. Ash, go ahead, pass it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. We're just gonna move into a 2-minute break just to move our bodies around, especially after sharing some of these reflections. I'm sure our bodies and hearts just need a little bit of space. So we will come back in 2 minutes.
Hello, hello, hello. I hope y'all enjoyed that short but meaningful break. If you can, please just send up a react on your screen so we know that everyone is back with us. And while we do that, I'm going to explain this next free expression activity that we'll be moving into. For this activity, feel free to prepare a pen and paper, clear your space, come back to your breath. We'll have some prompts on the screen to help guide you. We encourage you to express your reflections in whatever ways feel most accessible to you. Sorry, my cat is doing some cute things in the background. Whether that be writing, drawing, collaging, poetry, dancing, moving, singing, whatever. The prompts are as follows up on the screen. I learn by, I collaborate to, I want my community to, I play when I want to unlearn or forget. So we'll have around 5 minutes for this exercise. So just pick whichever resonates the most with you, or think of your own and just let it flow. And we will see you all on the other side.
All right, y'all. I know there's always so much more time that we could sit with and do these self-reflection activities. But we have so much to like share and talk through with y'all. So I just want to bring you back into the space again. Feel through that you gave yourself the freedom to move, write, and feel through thoughts that were coming to mind for you. We're now going to move into a more intentional activity where we thought we'd use the free expression to help us get into a reflection space. So the question around like how have borders in the colonial education project caused you harm? We now want to move into like the concept of, and some of y'all even just started to talk about the concept of the borders within our classrooms. So grateful that y'all already brought us there, but want to talk a little bit more about, since we've touched on how even beyond the physical border of the walls of the classroom, there are also other mental and social borders that prevent us from being able to exist as our full selves in traditional learning spaces. School doesn't provide the intention or care that would allow us to be vulnerable, to lean into curiosities, to feel safe, to fail as we explore the worlds and ourselves. This is because of a number of factors we all know, but from the power dynamics that exist between teacher and student, where one leads and another follows, to the extremely rigid social and structural expectations, to the indoctrination of young people into one-sided narratives of who they are and who they should be. Given that we want to set aside reflection time for you to sit with the question, how can our learning environments allow for us to show up as our full selves? And what would it take for you to feel safe to explore, learn, play, experiment, be fluid, or be borderless? And you can write this down, you could put it in the chat, or you can keep it to yourself and hold on to it for our later activity. But the question right now is, we've been building off of, hopefully this is helpful in flowing through the activities, but basically we went from generally thinking about borders, the colonial education project, then thinking about how those borders in colonial education caused you harm. And now how can we think about moving from the harm and healing from it, and thinking about how our learning environments could allow for us to show up more fully as our full selves. What would it take for you to feel that safety, to explore, learn, play, and be borderless? And as y'all reflect on that question, feel free to share it verbally or in the chat. We are a little bit behind our whatever we think about schedules and agendas, but we are a little bit behind. How would folks feel, to Joe's question, about moving fluidly? This is what we meant by fluidly thinking about language. For the sake of time, it seems like folks all speak English. Should we continue the rest of the session in English? Maybe just a thumbs up if that feels okay. Well, thanks, Stevie and Katie. Sweet, sweet. All right, cool. Awesome. So back to this question. How can our learning environments allow us to show up as our full selves? So spend a few minutes, 2 minutes or so, just thinking about it, and then please feel free to share out in whatever way feels comfortable. Anyone like to share reflections?
Yeah, I'll share mine. I kind of linked the two together, like the two prompts that we had.
Yeah.
I learned by moving through the world honestly and trying my best to be accountable when I'm wrong and when I'm causing harm. And I want my community to see the ways that defense of unintentional harm and how that defense turns into intentional harm, as like someone, you know, getting called out for some remark that they made that was unintentionally racist, but it's in that pivot point of their defense where they can choose to be like, wow, I appreciate you saying that to me. I did not see that, or I didn't mean it that way, blah, 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 blah. Like that choice of defense is when the intentional harm happens. And that defense space is what prevents folks from showing up as their full selves because they will be harmed. People are not willing to be wrong. So then folks are required to code switch for the comfort of, you know, the mindset of whatever the mass majority of that space is. It's harmful. It doesn't let people show up as their full selves.
Damn. Yeah. Thank you so much, TV, for just naming all of that, the accountability, how often we are just situated in scarcity and defense mindsets, and really, really grateful for those reflections. I see some others in the chat. Joe, do you want to share some of the folks' reflections in the chat for us?
Certainly. Second, took my headphones out, but my mic sometimes goes a little wonky on me.
So Stevie said, I learned by moving through the world honestly and trying my best to be accountable when I'm wrong, when I'm causing harm. I want my community to see the ways that when they are defensive of the unintentional harm and how that defense turns into intentional harm. Example being, I use they, them pronouns with a defense reaction of, well, I didn't mean to make that mistake, et cetera, et cetera. This defense space is what prevents folks from showing up as their full selves because they'll be harmed. Folks will be required to code switch for the comfort of the colonial mindset. Julie says, for me, it feels like a lifelong unlearning process. I realized I had the most answers to the last prompt you offered about what I want to unlearn. And Sachi says, letting go of grades and GPAs, recognizing that school is only a part of one's life and learning is constant. We all exist in complexity.
Thank you all so much. And thanks, Ro. So with that, we are not alone with you in sharing our own reflections about the ways in which we're healing from harms as homegrown. So we also just wanted to, now that you all have shared your reflections, share what we're doing within our community as a collective. We're really trying to grow a loving, caring space for us to learn with vulnerability, with fluidity, with curiosity and trust. And so the question that we've been sitting with here is like, how have we been working towards nourishing more healthy learning environments? And how have we been disrupting and or healing from borders in the Colonial Education Project? And so some reflections that we wanted to share with you all is one that Homegrown has gone through many iterations and transformations of what we are and could be in just our 1.5 years on Earth. It can be really hard for us to find a balance between being clear about our vision and also just embracing the messiness. So we've faced a number of challenges in stewarding this multilingual and cross-border space. We've been reckoning with the reality of negotiating language, just like you saw today, and translation, and existing in multiple places at once. These challenges remind us not to fixate on the perfection of understanding, which I think really ties to what y'all were shared too about grades, GPAs, like they're all this perpetuation of this concept of like success, perfection. That's what school and our education system instills in us. So we're breaking that is also really hard, not just with language, but also how we are very much still a baby in all senses of the word, and very much still learning about ourselves and from and with others. So we're on this very windy spiral journey. We've also learned firsthand that learning across generations is part of healing those harms, and that play and exploration are the best tools for learning when we do it with our friends, whether that be older, younger, or in between. And yeah, we just wanted to share some nuggets and examples of what we've been doing just to, for y'all to learn a little bit more about us. But one thing that we really think about a lot here is, what does it mean to reimagine, unlearn, and disrupt the pressure of fast-paced output and productivity, or even the shame of unrealized goals, and instead looking at programming that we do here on our borderlands as fluid, and where the creation itself is given time. So where dreamers and dreams behind workshops, events, gatherings, cocoons, playdates are given or give themselves the permission to slow down and to circle back to visions or pause. And Marta Rose says it beautifully, and like buried treasure that is uniquely available to you to dig up again and use in new ways. So for instance, we had projects in this last year where some folks started them and actually haven't returned to them. And we've given that like time for them to just pause and sit with it. And maybe they can return to it. Maybe when they return to it, it'll be a completely new experience, a new project, but we want to give that time to slow down. And then another thing that we think a lot about is viewing mentorship differently, and what that means to co-learn with people. So we see mentorship as a practice in skill and or resource sharing. So to us, mentors themselves can be any age and not a top-down experience, and that no one is the expert. Another org that we really admire, Fem Synth Lab, they're a branch of Feminist Center for Creative Work that's based in LA. They say it beautifully in their work, in their lab. They say, you know, we all have something to learn from and offer each other, even if our imposter syndrome won't let us acknowledge them. An example that we wanted to share about how we've been doing and looking at mentorship differently. In our first program last year, our facilitation lab, where we hosted a series of workshops that held space for local youth to create and facilitate their own educational programs. So some of them started to work on a community garden project. A dean, for instance, here with us, has been building a learning community around deprofessionalizing performance art. Some folks did one-time workshops. So we really experimented with this in those workshops, in those programs that the young people were working on and have been working on. We experimented with co-learning, a co-learning form of mentorship with an intentional pairing process where we tapped friends and community members we thought had the skills or experience and or just similar views around deconstructing teacher-student dynamics to support youth with feedback and one-on-one orientation and to help them manifest their projects. And they also, again, we're looking at learning when coming into supporting these young people, not as like, I have these skills to offer and gonna share them with you, but I have these skills that I have to offer and I wanna learn what you also have to share with me. So that's another example. I just wanted to pause. So we talked about some things like mentorship and how we're looking at it differently, as well as deconstructing like the pressure of fast-paced programming or just output. We have a few other examples, but before Ashley shares more, I just wanted to leave space for anyone who has like questions or thoughts that are coming to you about some of those things that we're doing. And definitely hope to stay connected because it sounds like a lot of y'all are doing similar really cool work. So excited to stay in community with you. And feel free to sit with those. Yes, please message and send us your contact information. Just for the sake of time, because we're excited to share a little bit more. Ashley was going to share a little bit about our cross-border programming.
Yeah, thank you, Ash. And like Ash mentioned, please let's stay connected and drop even just like if you have any reflections on anything that Ash mentioned with like mentorship or just generally what they were speaking on, please let us know. But yeah, as we've mentioned, you've probably gathered we are a cross-border collective based out of the San Diego and Tijuana region. Being cross-border means that we're faced with the challenge of the complicated challenge of being like either in TJ or live together because it's at the same time, and are influenced by the border, whether they cross over or not. And we do our best to move with the flow of our borderland community, existing in and in between, and how we learn together, both in our programming and in our language practices. Like Ash mentioned, some programs like Mutante, which Edine is spearheading, and El Primero, which is a photo book project which was led by a youth named Roger, who's 13, and who celebrated his neighborhood in Tijuana through photography, through like a photographic book. And we're very much, and was very much rooted in one particular place, specifically Tijuana. So on our other program, which is coming up this summer, Sonic Playground, it begins in July, is an experimentation with having a cross-border program and what that actually can look like in like real-time manifestation. So Sonic Playground is essentially a space for us on both sides of the border to learn alongside each other and experiment with DIY music production, with some sessions in Tijuana, some in San Diego, and then one session happening on both sides at the exact same time. So yeah, and even outside of our programming during our fundraising work, or even in sessions like this, we continue to try to experiment with language and fluidity, as you've like bared witness today. And we hope that Homegrown challenges the separation between languages that traditional interpretation methods can unintentionally create, kind of like an inorganic flow between languages, and just hoping that our embracing of said fluidity lets us be comfortable with the untranslatable, and to kind of learn from this discomfort. And as an example, in a recent teach-in on one of the failures of the US education system, 2 of our facilitators spoke in English, but people responded and spoke to the crowd in Spanish without translation happening back necessarily. And yeah, emotions were felt, shared, and emerged because of that fluidity, which I think was personally very liberating to like bear witness to. And there's also more practical ways in which we face challenges as a cross-border collective, like figuring out carpool situations, money transfer logistics, communicating using different tools for accessibility, and just heightened awareness of conditions with, who has the right to, shift between these borders. Thank you.
Yeah, this is so interesting to hear some folks' recommendations of some folks' work. This sounds, I don't know, Adine, if you know this person that Sachi, let me know if I'm not pronouncing that right, about, but we actually were just going to share a little bit about Mutante, this performance learning community that Adine is leading. And I was like just about to say to our team, like, we may not have time to talk about this, but it sounds very relevant to this person that you just recommended. I don't know, team, if you think we should move into that last activity or share that with folks to do with us after the session.
I guess I'm curious about what the folks in this space need, like, or like what are y'all feeling?
Right. Yeah, because it sounds like this, there's a big influence there that we can, just share a little bit more about our experience, or to give a framing of what we were going to end our session with was a cool brainstorming session, maybe Winter, because you have so much more of the brain behind this visual on mural board. You can just give them, Katie, Stevie, Julia, Sachi, both Katie's, like an idea of what that activity would be, and then they can tell us what they'd prefer to do.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me? Sorry, I had myself on mute. But hi everyone, I'm Winter. Yeah, we were gonna move into some sort of like reflection activity, or not reflection, brainstorming, where basically we have access to Miro, which is an open source kind of whiteboard for us to add things on, and kind of use the reflections that we've used throughout the entire session about like what would it take for us, going back to that question of what would it take for us to have a nourishing learning environment, and sort of literally mapping out like this empty dreaming space, kind of like what that would look like after we step out of this contained space. So like yeah, trying to navigate what we would need in a learning environment that's actually supportive.
Maybe
And so
you can
that's an
share
option that we
the
could move into, or okay.
Maybe you can share the mural so folks can see it, but maybe, yeah, wondering if
Yeah.
folks prefer, maybe it's that we just shared the screen and y'all can see what we're imagining. And then maybe some of you, as the dean is sharing that experience, can kind of like be on there playing around with the board. Yeah, wonder what folks are thinking. I know. It is.
I mean, I'm open to brainstorming and doing that. Just like so many things went through my head about like, oh, how do we change like the safety security for the entire world to create that space. So it seems so vast, but I'm open to it in the next 10 minutes if you all are.
And it can be something that all of us, like 7-8 people, get to work on after the session together. Like this board we can do, together. And that's one way we can stay connected, is like even having like follow-up conversation about what people have been putting on Miro since we talked.
It could also be a conversation to continue in the Excel event space. Like I wonder if there's, because I'll also drop the Padlet link that we did in the last Youth Liberation Education Justice session. And I feel like all those things need to be together. Like they should be in conversation.
Cool. Yeah, we would love to hear how that might work with the Excel events. So yeah, definitely would love to continue in whatever way we could with this activity, because yeah, there's so much here and it'd be cool to see everybody's fields and as it begins to be flourishing with trees and bushes. So cool. So there's a Padlet. Nice. Well, what do people want? Do you want to just like jump in the last 8 minutes or just talk, close out? What would you prefer? So such a big activity. So I know it would be a lot. Cool. Yeah. So I think, yeah, let's play around with Miro, and then let's definitely, for folks that are interested in talking more about Mutante, Adine, and all of the beautiful folks within that learning community are doing just really, really special things right now in terms of performance and just learning and deconstructing what that means to be in relation with other folks. So want y'all to, we currently don't have a website for Mutante. We have been wanting to update our homegrown website with information about each program. So yeah, thank you. I think it might be more conversation that might happen, Sachi. But Adine can share their like email maybe.
Yeah, I can share the email and Mutante, just so I can like do a quick comment about Mutante. Actually, one of the, since like I related it to this big question, it is such a big question, and I started with invite my friends, not to something algo pequeño, no, to something easy. So I invited my friends because since we were all interested in performance art or action art. But going back to how the school system here in Tijuana is built, there is no space for art or the body through art, no contact to find it. And that's seen in all the schools where it's all focused on technology and science. And if you do happen to have time for extra dance class or extra art class, it's probably because you're not in a public school, right? which is also like the class distinctions that happens. So Mutante came up as this way of me finding myself through performance, me finding performance art as liberating. Many other friends of mine as well found it liberating, but we also found that it was stuck. It was it was like taken by the university and the school, and it was like what people were saying that they didn't know how to do art. I was like, what are you talking about? Everyone can do art. We can all do art, but people were most people I know tienen esta idea. They have this idea that you have to be professional to do art, ¿no? Que tienes que tener una profesión para hacer el arte. So yeah, I just popping in quick ideas. I could read the text I had.
Yeah, Adine and the many other folks in the space have just so much that they are learning about in terms of performance and opening the space up for, all folks in the space to lead different sessions. Yeah, that's some of their reflections. Before we close out, it looks like I see folks in the mural, which is awesome. Just wanted to ground the activity a little bit. So basically the activity we'd love for, let me think through. So yeah, we know folks are, as you all are joining us from these different like worlds within worlds, we want to take this opportunity to build together and share tools. So as an example, you'll see on the board, we've done a lot of learning ourselves and want to uplift us. I think, I'm trying to think, oh, here. So the plants and trees and the context for mapping those out. So you'll see the question, what would it take to grow a nourishing educational space beyond school, wherever they may be? And then looking at the fields right now as an example, Winter and Zrow planted a tree for trust as a value that we want to see grown and cared for in school. And then there's also that shrub, which is planted around the tree for a more practical example of how trust can then be stewarded in our new learning environment by allowing space for us to learn what we want at our own pace. So we can think of trees as a value we want in our learning environment, and the shrubs as the practical small or large steps we can take, even of course after this call, to implement these values in our learning practices. So tree as the value, shrub as the practical small or large steps that we take to implement those values. And of course, we would love to stay connected with y'all, even follow up through, I guess, Julia, your mention of the Excellence session. So if there is another space that we can like continue this particular activity, we'd love to. Yeah.
Are y'all on the conference Excellence space?
I don't know. Are we, Winter?
Yes, we are.
Cool. Okay.
I think we're still learning it, but yes.
Same, 100%. It's totally new to me too. And but there's a space for lounges. I wonder if we could, I don't know if we can make a lounge or if we have to like ask AMC to make a lounge. But there's like a parents, caregivers, and families lounge and a youth lounge and a Spanish language lounge. And so I just wonder about like education liberation lounge.
Yeah. That'd be cool. So is there something that we should do to ask about creating the lounge, or what should we do next?
Does our tech support person know anything about that, how to make a lounge? If not, I can reach out to other folks.
I do not know about how to make a lounge. And when you were just describing it, I went to look on the Excellence site and see if there was a button for me to create one, and there is not.
Well, we will follow up, I guess, with you, Julia, if that feels okay, to think about how we continue this. And then hopefully we can email all the folks who joined us so that you all know when we have the lounge created and you want to join us if you do. Otherwise, this will be available, this board. So please continue to add to it. And maybe in a few weeks, we can like share back to y'all via email a visual of the board and what came up since then. But yeah, because we're at time, just want to close us out and thank you for spending part of your Friday with us. And we hope y'all feel like you leave today with at least a few new words or resources from some of the seeds we planted. And we are here alongside you as we all move through the spirally, one step forward, one step back kind of waves in our individual work and hearts towards disrupting traditional models of learning. And as we move closer to a new one that's rooted in mutuality, connection, and autonomy. We love cross-pollinating, so please share what you learned with those in your what you learn with those in your spheres and communities. And before we leave each other today, maybe just sharing in the chat 2 words that describe how your mind and body are feeling. And just, yeah, again, a few more parting words. We are Ash, Zro, Edine, Winter, and Ashley. We are only a few of the many part of this bigger web we call homegrown. And we are also many things. We started this as people ourselves who've gone through the school system as students and as educators, people working within and outside these systems, felt frustrated with nonprofit youth programs, felt frustrated by school, but always coming back to this love of learning with elders, younger cousins, friends, the world. Homegrown is that space to regrow and remediate that love for learning again. And that said, still difficult to explain all that we are, since we are working at the intersections of creativity, learning, and art. But on the screen, you'll see that Venn diagram showing our big, messy, homegrown ecosystem. And just please keep us in your gardens, and we want to get to know you more. And thanks those for sharing your emails. We'll stay connected and see how we can collaborate and be in relation together going forward. But have a good weekend, y'all. It was so nice to meet you, and thank you again.
Thank you all. Thank you, Wesley.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Gracias.
Stay well.
Thanks, Wesley.